Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the Pervasive Media Studio Lunchtime Talk. These talks are live every Friday at 1 o'clock, both here in the building and live online. Hi, if you're watching online. So whether you're in Bristol or you're far away, you can join in the conversation. My name is Martin O'Leary. I'm the studio community lead here. I'm a white man in my 40s, long hair and a beard, wearing a very nondescript black hoodie today. Every Friday, we throw open the doors of the Pervasive Media Studio for Open Studio Friday, where we offer you the chance to spend some time in our space by hot desking alongside our residents and staff from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. So especially big welcome to anyone who's new to the studio. Can anyone who's new to the studio put your hand up? Oh, yeah, quite a few today. This bit's for you. Welcome. What is the Pervasive Media Studio? We're a diverse and collaborative community exploring creativity and technology, everything from comedy to coding and product development to performance art. And we're a partnership between Watershed, where we are right now, UE Bristol and the University of Bristol, and we're funded by Arts Council England. And what we do is we offer studio space, including desks, meeting rooms, events and opportunities, all for free to our residents as part of a spirit of generosity and mutual exchange. And most of all, we're a space for people to take risks with embryonic ideas and make some time for collaboration. So just a few notes before we begin. Please do feel free to move around. There's a kitchen back there. You can grab a tea or a coffee or a glass of water. We have a quiet space just next to this space. So to my left, your right, around the corner there, there's a little room. It's got some sofas and beanbags, and the door closes and it's fairly well soundproofed. So if you need to take a break at any point, you're welcome to pop in there. We're not expecting a fire drill today. If you hear a fire alarm, it's probably real. We will direct you to the fire exits, but in any event, they are at the other end of the studio. Again, my left, your right, at either end. And then there are accessible toilets, including baby change, over there in the corridor next to the kitchen. There'll be a Q&A at the end of this talk. So for those of you who are watching online, please pop your questions into the YouTube chat. Lawatam is here. He will be your voice in the room today. If you're in the building, please raise your hand and we'll send around a microphone so the folks at home can hear what you're saying. You can get news on all of our future talks. And actually, for once, we have quite a few future talks up on the website. By heading to watershed.co.uk/studio, at Pervasive Media Studio at mastodon.social on Mastodon, at pmstudiouk.bsky.social on Blue Sky, and at Pervasive Media Studio on Instagram. If you're following us on Twitter/X, you'll have noticed we're not posting on there anymore. So please find another information source. It's not a good one. Anyway, our speaker for today is Sarah Nicolls. Sarah is a pianist and composer, inventor, academic and entrepreneur, as well as being a studio resident. Her inside-out piano radically enlarges the possibilities of the piano by simply sending the strings vertically up from the keys. And today she's going to share her experiences in interactive electronic performance and her processes of reimagining the configuration of the piano in new and imaginative ways. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Sarah.
Hello. Thank you very much for coming. It's great to see so many people here. It's lovely to meet you all. And I am thinking of this as an informal situation. So if I say something that you want me to clarify or you want to ask a question, feel free. I have not religiously timed myself in a sermon, so I'm very happy to interact with you. I do a lot of things, and some days I do think that maybe I'm doing too many things. So yeah, very much pianist is the first thing that I am. And, you know, I began playing the piano. My mum was a piano teacher, so I sat under the piano apparently until I could reach the keys and then demanded my time. And everything really stems from that, from playing the piano, from music, from discovering how it feels to play music and make music. And there's a whole journey about being a musician, which of course is, you know, just the aspect through which I sort of express myself. And that journey has been, you know, intensive, hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours sitting at a piano, working out how to play a piano, and all of the physicality of that and all of the changing that you experience when you learn an instrument. You know, I was practicing 4 hours a day as a child, so very intensive. I went to music school when I was 14 in Manchester, so, you know, yet more kind of intensive work. and then I went to university. At university in the third year, I met a lecturer who really I resonated with. He taught us about contemporary music. He basically taught us about more modern music, and it really pricked my ears up. And the thing that spoke to me about the music that he was teaching us was that structurally it was different. And I mention this because structure has become something I think about a lot now. The structure of, a Beethoven sonata was quite well understood, and we had lectures on Schenkerian analysis about foreground and background harmonic shifts, and things could be kind of squared quite easily, even in a radical Beethoven sonata. But then along come different composers, and suddenly the way that you have to think about the analysis of the structure is much more mathematical and complex. And I just got really obsessed with weird, difficult music. And I became kind of really very much involved in the sort of avant-garde. So this is me playing a piano concerto a while ago at the South Bank. This was actually the result of, it's doing things. I'll just put that back. I haven't finished about this yet. So already I'm starting to add to the piano here. There's actually an extra keyboard. That's a MIDI keyboard, which I've put on top of the piano. But even before I started adding to the piano, the music that I was playing was certainly avant-garde, certainly complicated. I like to tell a story about a piano concerto that I premiered in Huddersfield Contemporary Music Festival, if anyone's been to that. It's the place to go if you like complex modern music. And it was a concerto with the London Sinfonietta. The opening was by Richard Barrett, and the opening was really quiet. And it had 4 layers of music. Each layer was a different number within beats. So it was like 17 against, 9 against, 23 against 5, something like that. But P. And so this layer is really quiet, but then I have to jump, obviously 4 layers, they're spread across the keyboard. I have to move my hand between the layers to keep each voice going, and each voice going here. And so there's 4 layers in total, really quiet, solo, opening of a concerto, really stressful, right? And the conductor's going, like, don't start. And I'm like, come on, mate, like, it's a bit tense here. I'm like, it's also live on the radio, just to add a bit of juice to the situation. So I'm like, I kind of like to start. Would it be all right? Like, can I? It's like, and then eventually he kind of goes like this, and I'm like, oh yeah, he can hear a sound. Oh, we're in Huddersfield. We're in a barn with a metal roof, and he thinks the aircon is on, and I'm like, it's rain. It's rain. And then he goes, okay. And so then he goes, you can start. So there's like this minute of silence on the radio, and then out of the sort of quiet, distant sound of rain comes this really quiet, really complicated. And like, I did nail it, but it was pretty intense. So that's the kind of situation that I was living in, And that was already like quite challenging. But then I thought, I want to do some more things. And I've always loved the sound of electronics. I just feel really drawn to the sounds that you can make on a computer. As a student, I was like doing Cubase, dance music and stuff. And so I decided to start exploring what can I do to play electronic music sounds, because we used to go to gigs, somebody would walk on with a laptop, press play, and we're like, it sounds great, but it looks rubbish. And I was really interested in like, how do you actually use my skills as a pianist? I'm doing all this, I can do all this physical stuff. Like, what happens if I try to also play electronics with that? And so that became a big obsession over many years. And this was actually an AHRC project that I did. We created 6 new premieres that I performed, and in fact, actually at Huddersfield. And then, amazingly, the curator of the festival said, oh, let's kidnap the audience in the interval and take them somewhere on buses. I was like, brilliant. And then we took them into the countryside to an art gallery, and there I played with my band, which was my most cool moment in my life on Warp Records, with Mira Kalix, who's sadly since passed, and David Shepherd. And we were this band called Alexander's Annex, and we were like, even on the experimental end of Warp. And the funny stories from that are like, we played at the Electron Festival in Geneva. It's too long a story, I now realize, to tell, but essentially there was a lot of fans waiting for some like serious gabber, and they got us and they were confused. And half of them hated it and half of them loved it. But it was fun. And this is just an amazing building called the Parco della Musica. And this is where I met Mira Kalix. We were both being soloists with Sinfonietta. There was some great programming in those days. There was a sort of idea to put together intelligent dance music, so warp records with stuff like Stockhausen, Ligeti, so it was kind of a way to say, hey, you know what, these people have open ears, these people have open ears, maybe these people could like each other's stuff. Obviously what you find is that the IDM fans are like more open-minded, but there we are. And so we went on this tour, and I got to play John Cage to like 3,000 Aphex Twin fans, which was lush, because they were like, yeah! I was like, this is better than a regular audience. So, but like having stuff in different contexts, basically we came away from the Parco della Musica gig thinking it'd be fun to push these things together, like actually squash them together in music. So that's what we were trying to do. Here's me playing a piece by Atelier Tanaka, who is some kind of person on the board, maybe, of something at Pervasive Media, something like that. But anyway, Professor Atelier Tanaka, he's also a goldsmith and Bristol Interaction Lab, I think it's called. Anyway, and so here I'm wearing muscle sensors, and these are EMG, electromyography. So they're reading, basically, the electricity that muscles create when they move. And I did some very detailed work in trying to think about how could I separate, this is a bit crazy, how could I separate the muscles in my arm so that like some muscles I can use to control the electronics and some muscles I'm obviously going to use to play the piano. And I kind of tried to sort of divide like muscles in my arms. And I wrote a paper on it. It's in Leonardo Music Journal if you want to read it. And it's about I ended up calling it the ballet in my arms, because it was like this, muscular dialogue that was going inside my body to control sounds. And so to give you an example, like we sampled, let's say, a G major chord. Let's call it G minor. It's more interesting. And then, so I could activate the chord by starting to tense certain muscles, and therefore I could like effectively fade in the piano, right? And so as I approached the keyboard, I could fade this chord. And then as I reached the keyboard, when it got to the precise volume I wanted, that I could play the chord at the same volume. So then it's like, now I can breathe the piano. And what I've realized actually is a theme in my whole life is I play the piano, I want to pretend the piano is everything else. And that's kind of like, artistically seems to be something like a hook that I've realized after the fact. When I first played with my cello friend and I was playing on my inside piano stuff, I was like, oh, I've just been trying to play the cello for the last 10 years. I wasn't a very good string player, so maybe it's good. So yeah, so this is about really sort of intimate bodily control. I didn't know where to put this, so I just put it here. There we go. I'm Sarah Nicolls, and this is the Inside Out piano. The name kind of says it all, Inside Out. I wanted to literally make the inside of the piano available to the performer and also visible for an audience. It's sort of impressive all over again, where a grand piano is familiar. Somehow just putting it vertically makes people really reappraise just how massive and sort of monumental they are. I mean, I think for an audience, it's just really good fun because they can see what's going on. So if they're hearing a noise, they can actually see how it's created. So there's an immediate rapport that people have, and a kind of their curiosity is rewarded, and they can kind of see how it's unfolding, but it's still strange and mysterious in the sounds that it produces. That was an EBow, by the way. And they were invented for playing like legato on a guitar. So you can buy them in guitar shops and stick them on a piano, and they just sound great. And again, what an EBow does is the opposite of what a piano does. A hammer hits a string, then the sound is decaying. Like, that's all you've got. You've got attack and how long you're going to hold it for. Whereas an EBow is like starting from nothing, arriving. So again, it's like the opposite of what a piano normally does. Here's somebody else playing inside the piano to just say to you, other people do this too. It's quite normal, really. I mean, everyone's doing it. 1916 is the first time it was scored by, crazily enough, Percy Grainger, that radical. More well known as like 1923, you've got Henry Cowell, the Banshee, where normally are so like po-faced, someone comes on and they both bow together and one of them sits down and just plays the pedal, and then the pianist goes around to the curvy bit and does all the cool stuff. And so I did the Banshee at a live Radio 3 gig. I was like, you only need one person for this piano. And so you just put the pedal down and play the Banshee. So yeah, it's quite fun, that kind of discovering. So anyway, I now need to tell you about reinventing the piano. And it's useful that I've told you about the EMG stuff, because actually it was during one of those gigs. I was like doing all this cool, like gestural, ooh yeah. And then I had to lean into the piano. I thought, this is nonsense. I've created this really cool gestural thing because I want to share visibility with you. I want you, the audience, to see what's going on. And now here I am leaning into the piano. You can't see that. So then I thought I better change the shape of the piano, which is now the total curse of my life. Here I am in Brazil. This is the first one that I made. And actually, no, it's a lie. This is one we made in Brazil because we couldn't work out how to get the piano there. So we arrived a week early, and it was so amazing. We came to this workshop in Brazil, and there was 4 upright pianos stood in a row, and they said, we just thought you'd like to choose one. I was like, and then here are your carpenters. I was like, yeah. Oh, it's done that thing again. So, stay. Yeah, so it was an upright piano. First one I built, totally broke that avant-garde thing, because I had 500 quid to like, how can I hack apart an upright piano and shove it back together with the strings above the keys? That was my big idea, take the strings from there and put them above the keys. So we hacked apart the piano. We actually hung it from a roof truss in a squat in Liverpool and hit it with things for a week because that was fun. And then worked out how to stick it back together. Obviously, in changing the shape of the piano in such a basic way, I'd accidentally put the bass on the right and the treble on the left. And the only notes that were still what the keys said were A and E flat. And everything else was wrong. And basically what happened was I was like, that's a shame. And I had a Matmos gig like very soon after, and I was trying to play like this score, and my brain was like, yeah. And it made me think about those people that apparently wore upside down glasses, and then like after 3 weeks their brains flipped, but it doesn't work. For upside down piano, it didn't happen. 3 weeks later, I wasn't playing Bach Preludes going, yes, it's fine, it's absolutely. So, but what it did was it rebirthed my relationship with the piano. Like suddenly all I could do was go, okay, that note's good. Oh, that one sounds nice with it. Oh yes, these 2 notes are lovely. And like literally before that, I was like, I can't play that piece. It's got major thirds. And then I was like, major thirds, sound nice. So yeah, I think artistically it broke me and fixed me at the same time. Then I made a proper one that was the right way round. This was with Pierre Melbos, who is a brilliant piano technician and builder. And I met him because he built the piano. Oh, stop doing that. Sorry, my laptop's like, my laptop thinks I need a break. I'd met him because he built the piano Bache. And the Bache brothers are the people that make really cool amplification systems with like big metal sheets. Or like they made a inflatable guitar, so you could control the world and you just blew up the body when you wanted to play it. But they're really amazing. So look up Piano Bache. It's beautiful, and Pierre made that. So anyway, we made a unique action. So you'll notice, first of all, it's straight strung. So therefore I think, and I say this every time because I don't know, of course, but I think it's the only piano in the world where you can play every part of every string. And that is because I want to play harmonics. I want to press the key and slide my finger up and down the string and play a harmonic everywhere on the string, or I want to be able to scrape the whole string. If you stick your finger on this end, it sounds really nice, just muting. So the whole thing is open. That's the point. It's like an open interface. And suddenly you've got, yeah, you can play Chopin, whatever, but also you can do all this other stuff. You can hit it with timpani sticks, glass balls, e-bows, whatever you like. Magnets work amazingly. So like literally it's the inside out piano. And you know, a big kind of philosophical thing for me is like, hey, this is really piano. Like when you see a grand piano on a stage, you see the side of it, you see the lid, you see the legs. It's black and shiny. That's what you're looking at. When you look at this, you're just looking at piano. And you can see the hammers coming from behind, and you can see what's going on, you know? So for me, it's like revealing the thing. It's like taking it out of its box and going, hey, this is actually more amazing. So I feel a bit evangelical. I do spend my life trying to make these things, and so it's quite nice actually to share a bit of evangelism, because the rest of trying to make what I'm doing happen is so hard and so far from that, actually. So thank you for sharing joy about this. So we made a whole new action, which is hitting from behind. So it's back striking. The dampers are also behind. So everything is behind. And that just means that the whole string interface is free, good to go. There's a hilarious detail. When I went to pick it up in Paris in 2014, and Pierre says, oh, by the way, it swings. I was like, what, sorry? You know, it was the piano of my dreams. And then he tells me it swings. And I was like a bit gobsmacked, because I was like, Pierre, it's amazing. I don't need it to do anything else. And there's a little balance bar here. You can see from the frame, there's like an A-frame. There's a pivot point there. And I ratchet it down so that it goes on its side, so that I can shove it in the van. And that's all I said to him. I said, I've got to be able to move it on my own. And obviously, it's like 200 kilos in midair. But the byproduct is there's a balance bar. You take the balance bar away, and the entire piano swings like that. So when I discovered I had a swinging piano, I made some theatre shows, because I thought you can't have a swinging piano and not do something with that. It's a bit intense, but my son nearly died on the day he was born, and that was like, whoa, life and the swings and how you don't know what's going to happen. And so I made a show called Moments of Weightlessness. You can watch it online. It's me mucking around, being a mother and going, whoa. But also the piano kind of becomes the pulse of life, and it was very fun to make that show and quite therapeutic. And I thought it's, sorry, bad resolution, but it was worth just telling you also that I've ended up making shows about the environment quite a lot. In 2018, I made 12 years, and there's like a whole series of works that I'm making that are kind of with climate and environment in mind. Back to pianos. So yeah, all pianos in the world, like most of them are actually black and shiny. And you know, grand pianos, upright pianos, every single piano in the world is one of these. So I'm trying to change that. Trying to disrupt the piano market, like one woman against the piano market. Obviously, keyboards are great. They're very small and light and handy, and you can pop them in your car or take them on the tube or whatever, you know, go somewhere with them. And they don't take up much space. And so what I want to do is basically make a piano that logistically is like a keyboard. That's kind of that's where I'm at. Pianos have got lots of cast iron in them. This is all the cast iron, very heavy. It's the engineering problem is 20 tons of string tension. That's the issue you've got. How do you hold that in a different way? This is just a cool photo of how you make piano soundboards. I just like this photo, to be honest, so I stuck it in. It looks like this is piano. This is actually just the things that are keeping the wood gluing. That's the piano soundboard. But I just think it looks elegant, don't you? Piano actions, crazy complicated, loads of things going on. Double escapement, you might have heard, or it might have escaped you. So hit the key, the hammer hits the string, but it bounces back. 1726, this was the revolution that got us away from clavichords, which are very quiet because you press the key and the thing stays on the string. Very quiet. Or harpsichords, where the plectrum passes the string, pluck, and plucks the string. So hammers suddenly give you volume change. They tried to make me play harpsichord at Cheatham's. They were like, you've got really small hands, you should be a harpsichordist. I was like, no, I like crescendos, which means getting louder. Or softer, you know, diminuendos, but change. So hammers give you dynamic change. That's why pianos are great. Pianos are really heavy. This is a piano being craned into somebody's house. It's nuts, like literally people hire £10,000 cranes to put them in their upstairs flat, like it's silly. Pianos get made from carbon fiber, but not in an interesting way, just in a really sort of modern way. These are David Clavin's pianos, and in fact I've worked with David Clavin's a bit. So this is one approach to the kind of lighter, smaller thing, and they're very beautiful, and he makes gorgeous instruments. And this is the keyboard, very similar look, but not kind of necessarily in the heart of the thing. But obviously what these are doing is reducing the tension by reducing to 1 string per note, reducing from 8 octaves to 5 octaves, reducing size, so string length, and obviously they're also in a kind of normal upright configuration. So, you know, you can buy a piano that you can lift with your friend, but is it as much piano as I want? Not quite. This is an old picture which I'll just flick past. And this is me winning an award, yay! So Innovate UK have been completely amazing, and I did win a Women in Innovation award, and I did get a plaque, and that's quite exciting. And actually the plaque was next to a Reba plaque, and it's bigger than the Reba plaque, so I thought maybe I could start a band called Bigger Than Reba. This is a slide which shows World Building of the Year, Gardens by the Bay in Singapore. The reason this is here is because I'm working with the same structural engineers that did the structural engineering on this. And I find that deeply exciting. And I just like this picture because I talk to the director, Neil Thomas, a lot about leaves and organic structures. And I thought, you know what, the piano ribs and the ribs of this conservatory, there's similar things going on. And so the conversations that I have now about structure aren't really just about the written music. They're about shapes and form and, you know, how do structures resolve tension. I found it really interesting the other day. I was thinking to myself, you know, music is tension and resolution. And so is engineering. Structural engineering is the same thing. What's the force? How are you going to resolve it? And I don't know. I like to think in that zone. This is just a close-up from a paper, and it's just really to show like one of the things that we think about, which is the soundboard, of course, is the heart of the instrument. And what happens when you vibrate a soundboard at different frequencies? What's happening to that? Where's the kind of heat map of the sound and the acoustic and the vibration? And how do we take this thing which has hundreds of years of development? You know, recently I went to the piano manufacturer that we're working with in Germany, and they had Liszt's piano they kept breaking, which was a wooden string frame, and then Liszt's piano with the first cast iron frame that he couldn't break. And his technician had basically gone, Liszt, mate, you've got to stop breaking the pianos. And he's like, I want to play this loud, okay? I want to rock out like this. And so they're like, well, we're going to have to make you a cast iron piano there. All right then. You can imagine the conversation. And actually the sound difference is fascinating. But so now what I want to do is strip that cast iron out, but keep the sound and keep that. So we can do it, right? Like if we can build that conservatory in Singapore, we can totally do it. Here's some more stuff about pianos. Just like there's so many things to think about with the piano, not least that it's repetitious. 210 strings, 88 keys. Like how does the string vibrate? What do the pins do? Which way is the angle of this thing? That's an overstrung piano, which is like most pianos in the world, so the strings cross over. If you have a piano at home, the strings will cross over. Sorry to break the news to you. But soon you'll be able to buy one of mine with straight strings. And then, last but not least, I think, I'm now making a virtual instrument. And so basically, actually I shouldn't ponder on this slide too long, I suppose, because I didn't ask them if I could share it, and this is on YouTube. But this is a prototype. This is not how it will look. Basically, we sampled my whole piano, and you're going to be able to buy that, the sounds, and then make your own music. So that's exciting. And then actually this is my last slide, which I can do a whole nother talk if we decide we want to do that. But for now, this is the last slide. And I included this because this was here. And this was such a brilliant thing to do. This was the Sony Assistive Music Hackathon. Do you think I got all the words?
Instrument.
Assistive Musical Instrument Hackathon.
Yeah.
Yes. It was a very long title. And it was brilliant. We each split into teams. We worked with a para orchestra musician. We got to work with Steve Varden. And Steve came with this really interesting question, which is, you know, with my movements, he can move one arm in big gestures. I want to be able to control harmony. And there is a whole nother talk which I've got, which, you know, if there's no questions at all, I could deliver quickly. But essentially, I went away and thought about how do I play chords at a piano? And what I want to do is not the sort of Casio root position, C major, G major, F major, like that. What I actually want to do is I want to find a chord, and then I want to change one note. And then I want to change another note. And I want to morph through harmonies. And so that's what we basically tried to do for Steve. And we made this prototype, and he had 3 objects. He asked for it to be edible, so they were a plastic strawberry, a lemon, and something else. And he could do what I've just described, but with big movements that he could manage. And to be honest, like, this is a lovely experience for me. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. And it seems to me that the Pervasive Media Studios has that capacity to kind of bring people together who have quite different perspectives. You know, some people are better at building or making, some people are obsessed with composition, some people might be all about the looks of something, and just how do we work together. So for me, that was a lovely project to be involved with. I think that's the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Do we have any questions? All right, I'm going to get you a microphone. There you go.
I was very impressed to hear you mention Warp Records, which
Thanks, yeah, me too.
Certainly would appear to me to be the avant-garde end of pop. Now, was it the the pop side or the classical side, you think, that first drew you into avant-garde composition and the performance?
Yeah, so I honestly think that it was the complexity that drew me into avant-garde. I think it was the fact that there was more to get hold of, and more that I didn't understand. And it didn't sound at all like pop. But then I did think...
It was more a challenge than anything else, you think?
I think, and also I think the challenge to bring human and emotional interpretation to something that might really seem like a maths equation, you know, like, and the gift of being the interpreter to be able to try and make your heart break whilst also playing you 13 against, 7 against, 15 against, do you know what I mean? And something about the balance of expressivity and that sort of complexity. Yeah, I enjoyed that challenge.
Okay.
But yeah, it didn't sound like pop.
Thank you very much.
Any
Good
other
questions.
questions? Audience?
Just to ask, have you got any examples of
Sorry.
players?
Oh, of me doing things.
The music that you make?
Yeah, well, the best thing I can say is definitely go to Bandcamp. Musicians like Bandcamp. Yeah, and I have a few albums on there. And yeah, there will be another album coming out, but I'm working on that at the moment. And in terms of looking at some videos, they're all on my website, sarahnicolls.com. Yeah, do, and feel free to keep in touch. I think the sign up on my mailing list still works, but info@sarahnicolls.com if you want to get news. I may write a newsletter soon. It's an infrequent occurrence. But yeah, but quite seriously, in terms of kind of keeping up with, you know, what I'm doing, I think there's about to be a very productive period. Yeah, that's all I can say about that.
Any other questions from the audience?
Hi, I was thinking about in terms of composition, when you obviously have access to the strings at the front so you can manipulate them as you go.
Yeah.
Whether, when you're composing for that instrument specifically, whether you have a way of like tabulating, you know, like how you prepare a piano, you can have the list of things you can do with it. Whether you have a way of like, you know, slide to this harmonic on this string when this note plays. The question's so good, they told it twice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So do you mean like notation?
Yeah, or some other way, like some other way of scoring it, I suppose, that aspect of it.
Yeah, no, I have thought about this question, partly I haven't gone really deep into it because I know that no one else has got the same piano. And so yet is the word. Thank you. I need more of this. I have thought about notation. I've thought about notation a lot because I've dealt with a lot of notation and a lot of people going, I've got this really great new way of writing this thing. And I'm like, look, could you have written it in the most normal way possible with a squiggle? They're like, yeah, do that. So my best example for notation is Lackerman's Guiro, because it just looks like music, but it's definitely not music as you know it. And also, there's some versions from Sciarrino and various other composers who've just worked out, like, the closer you can stay to absolutely normal notation, the better. And, just with, like, one symbol. Like a pizzicato on a violin is a normal note with a plus on the top. It's great. Everyone knows that. And you don't have to work hard to remember the plus. And so, certainly, when I have notated things, that's the route I go down. Like an ebow will just be with a hairpin or something. There's lots of cool pedaling from Berio. I like the way he does that, but that's kind of a different question. In terms of how much I've notated is not as much as maybe I will do in the future, hopefully. And the only other thing that's interesting to say about people writing for the inside piano, because of course they do, is that because all the struts are in different places, you get these weird problems. There's a piece by Thomas Adès which requires you to put a piece of blue tack across the middle strings, which works really nicely in his piano. You can tell, because later you have to pull it off in one go. Doesn't work on any other piano, seemingly. And so you have a bit there, that side of the strut, and then a bit, and then another bit, this side of the strut. And so you have to go as if you're doing it in one motion, but of course you're like, oh, this is really annoying. So so there's these funny practical problems with inside piano, but notation-wise, I basically, what I've been doing, and also, you'd all be welcome to come to my gigs. They're very low-key. I'm doing them in Stroud at the minute, and I call it Piano Bath. And basically, I just play solidly for an hour. I improvise, and seems to be quite profound. People have, I think it's just the fact that, I don't think I'm making the best music in the world. I think it's that just actually stopping and only having to cope with listening to one thing and no interruption from clapping or hey, and in the next interval, I'm going to tell you about buying my CD. Just stripping all of that away from gigs and just going, here's some music. And people have reported some quite profound journeys that they've gone on. I just think it's because the world left them alone for an hour, And in that, I'm just improvising and layering. I use Ableton quite a bit. So just exploring. And then the other way I think about that composition is, sorry, I'm way not answering your question now. It's like islands of repetition and pattern and tunes, and then kind of the organic, messy bits coming straight out of that. I'm really interested in life, in organization, and in not knowing. And I really like the possibility to go fluidly between organization and not knowing, because I feel like they can then inform each other. That was getting a bit philosophical there. Yeah. Sorry, you had a question.
Thanks so much for the talk. It was really, really interesting. As an adolescent, I used to get to spend a little bit of time with a composer called Horacio Radulescu, and there's some really sort of fond memories of hanging around his house.
The piano icons.
Yeah, seeing all these pianos upright, and they've all been modified and everything. And
Where was that, by the way?
I was in Switzerland.
Cool.
When he was in Switzerland.
That's impressive, by the way. Impressive.
I mean, I'm not a musician in that way, I suppose, but it was more the kind of the elements that allowed the music to happen, and seeing those, and then being really inspiring to me, is in terms of breaking rules, breaking frames,
right,
and and experimenting. It was sort of very influential for me, I suppose. I guess a question for me was, I have lots of questions, but the main one was, to me, what to you are your restrictions? At what point do you say, at what point do you have your meatloaf moment and say, I won't do that?
Do you know, it's really funny, because the first thing that popped into my head was about 9 o'clock at night. That's when I go, boom.
Yeah. I guess the question was sort of along the lines of with the piano, with the physical object, is it like no longer a piano once the strings are gone, or where are the limits for you? Where
Okay,
will you
so
start?
this is an interesting area, because some people are like, that's not a piano anymore. I'm like, oh, you know, really? But I started to get an inkling of that recently when I saw an instrument which I won't name, but I was a bit like, oh yeah, actually, do I think this is still a piano? And I was kind of like, yeah, there are restrictions. And my issue is that I wish I was more restricted, because I'm really greedy. I want everything. I want the whole range. I want 3 strings per note at the top, then 2 strings, then 1 string. I want the sound. I want the full size. I want the soundboard to be exactly how it sounds. And so, to be honest, and then just go up the stairs, whatever, like, and I'm really like chasing that. And that's really difficult, because pianos weigh, you know, between like 300 and 750 kilos. So, yeah, in terms of marrying the restrictions or not, that's really hard, actually. And, you know, there are definitely days when I think, do I want too much? Should I just have a quiet life? You know, like, we also, built our own house in Stroud, and we like are running artist residencies and have a little gig space. It's called Rattle and Brash, if any of you want to come. We just had Stanley Donwood exhibiting there last weekend. Like, that's great. You know, there's a lot of things going on, aren't there? But yeah, for some reason, this reinventing the piano, like, seems to be my life mission. Do you have any restrictions you could suggest? Because, like, you know, I kind of need some, really. Yeah, but yeah. And then it's like minutes in the day. Yeah. I don't know if that answered your question.
Any more questions from the audience? Sorry.
I was just interested whether other composers have written specifically for your inside piano, or whether you were talking about playing pieces for prepared piano by other composers.
Yeah, so obviously I've played inside piano stuff by other composers a lot, because obviously that was kind of my route in. And people were writing a lot, and essentially I was just bored of sort of leaning over and it being really uncomfortable. Bad for my back. Yeah, I mean, the TED talk I gave, I got everyone to stand up and pretend to write, you know, 10 emails like this. It's not comfortable. And yet, if you want to explore sound, you want to be comfortable, because you need to be able to do it for ages. And so, yeah, so I did, it was a kind of physical solution, having discovered the sounds through other composers. But actually, interestingly, I think partly since the artistic break of making a back-to-front piano, which kind of shifted my center of gravity from sort of avant-garde and all the people I had been working with to, like, just want to play this nice stuff over here with some tunes. But also because actually getting to know an instrument, basically you have an idea and you set off and you try and make it, and then you make it, and that's amazing. And then you discover what it is, right? Because actually it's only in the meeting it. I guess it's like a blind date or something, you know, you rock up, you have some ideas, and then you're like, whoa, okay, this is a bit different. And the meeting of the instrument and the getting to know it and the kind of letting it influence you, and that transaction has kind of taken my focus. And some people have said to me, can I write an instrument for your piano? And part of me is like, sure, yeah, of course. And then part of me is like, oh, but then I have to play it because I'm the one with the piano. And between you and me and YouTube, I kind of wanted to find what was the music that was going to come out of me. And that's what happened. But in the future, I would absolutely love all sorts of people to write for it. And so that you know, the kind of big aim is that I will, you know, make this piano that you would theoretically be able to buy in the future. But it's a big, long road between here and there. But yeah. And I would also...
As a composer,
Yeah.
writing for one of the
Sorry,
finest
could you use the
within
microphone?
world and one performer,
Right.
it kind of limits the
Yeah.
exposure.
Although, to be honest, a lot of avant-garde music, you do the premiere and you never get to play it again. So, you know, it's probably not that different. Yeah, there's definitely a few concertos that have only been played once. Sorry, did you? Yeah.
So, like, how many modes have you got playing? You've got one like that.
Yeah.
One are you standing up? So that's like one with one hand in.
Sorry,
one
could you use the microphone as a
Oh,
microphone?
sorry.
I know we're avant-garde here, but
So you can be just playing it normally with two hands sitting down. Right?
Yeah.
You can sit with one hand playing and one going in.
Yeah.
And you can play at the keyboard, somebody else helping you out on the strings.
I don't normally have someone else.
How many different modes are there playing it?
Actually, there is a cool film that you could watch, which is on YouTube, which is the most recent thing I put up, which actually I managed to get a proper filmmaker and make a proper thing. So that would be worth watching. And that my YouTube channel is, I think, Sarah Nicolls or Sarah Piano. You'll generally find me under one of those. But the modes, yeah, playing one hand in, two hands. Yeah, that's it really. I stand up if I can't reach something or if I want to really whack it. But mainly it's about one person being able to sit and just explore entirely freely from a seated position. That's kind of almost the heart of the thing.
So quite a lot of one hand.
Yeah, quite a lot of that. Okay. Yeah. Also, of course, you can do preparations and then play. So I do, my kind of strap line in my head is like simple melodies shrouded in strange sounds. So I will kind of prepare the odd note and then play. Like, one thing I just absolutely love is the sound of the pure piano against the sound of prepared notes, because I just love that kind of orchestral, textural density of having that possibility where you can have a pure singing melody and some weirdness. Yeah, go on.
You had those things around your...
Yeah, the EMG sensors, yeah.
Is that something that you're going to develop further, or how did that go, or were there restrictions with that?
Yeah, so basically what I've discovered is trying to reinvent the piano literally takes my entire brain, life, heart, soul, etc. until 9 p.m. Boom. And so the electronic stuff, I'd love to get back into that, and in terms of the digital setup that I'm now able to make with the virtual instrument. So I've got my piano sounds in a keyboard. Then maybe the next step for that is to think about what is the vertical string interface / how could I maybe make that gestural. So certainly in that space, I have the possibility to create a sort of physically imagined piano, which would just be gestural. Like, could I map? It's about mapping basically, and the software, and whether you what complexity you can use to map. For example, if I was playing a key and then mapping the harmonic, like, it's just some time with the software guy, basically, software person, I should say. So anything's possible. What I'm most interested in at the moment is making that instrument as good as possible, and then figuring out what the vertical will be. At the minute, I'm thinking of sticking up like a couple of bass guitars, because I love plucking like really big low bass strings. So in the first instance, it's good you've reminded me about Radulescu though. That's a good image. Yeah. It's lucky I stopped at past. Yeah. I thought I was stopping too early. Yeah.
Thinking about your sort of weight to strength problem, have you looked at using more modern materials, or is that one of your boundaries? Modern materials, composites.
Absolutely. Yeah. I basically don't, I kind of like can't say too much. It's that whole commercial news thing. But you're on the money. Okay. We can talk after. Yeah, I mean, this is it. Basically, back in 2007, I said to myself, hey, pianos are really heavy. They have cast iron in them. Maybe we have new ways of doing engineering now that is different from 1825, which is when cast iron was patented. Oh, that's convenient. It's 200 years ago.
But would that be a heresy too far for many?
No.
No?
Forget it. Yeah,
okay.
No.
So
that is absolutely, totally, I'm going there. Yeah.
So
in terms of the restrictions.
But doesn't the sound change, or is that not a problem for you?
No, and that's why the whole thing is so slow, because you have to understand how the instrument works, and the key belly of the piano is the soundboard. That is where the sound is. And how the,
so
the
structure around it can change as long as the soundboard stays constant.
Basically, you need tense strings.
Yeah.
And you need something that is resonating.
Yeah, okay.
But so long as your strings are tense, then, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, good.
It is difficult and intense engineering, but yeah, in a couple of months I can tell you more.
Any other questions? I wanted to ask one actually. So you've done a lot of this, the piano work has been about making something for yourself to play, and you did then sort of thinking about product stuff where you're making something for some anonymous person out in the world to play.
Sure.
And then you did stuff like the work with Steve where you're making something for a very specific other person to play.
Yeah, yeah.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the difference between those three kinds of instrument design.
Yes, yes. And I think in terms of, so obviously in terms of designing for me, I've probably covered that. In terms of designing for other people in the world, obviously that's actually really fun because it's design process, design thinking. Amazingly, I've been lecturing design thinking recently. And, you know, actually it's about getting to know people and what people want. And obviously people are different. And so what do different people want? And what is their lifestyle? And what is their journey to the piano? And what do they want to do when they're there? And so actually understanding all of that. So I've done a lot of design work in that space to understand and appreciate how my piano could work for them. And I haven't yet done this, but one thing I'm really looking forward to doing is basically making a cardboard mock-up and taking it to different people's houses and just like chatting about it. And there's so much flavor in the chatting. This is one of the weirdest things I've discovered about lecturing design thinking, because you're basically standing in front of students saying, there's so much juice in a conversation, and they're like, what are you actually telling me here? And then they go off and do their interview, and then they get it. But yeah, so understanding what people want. So I've done a lot of that, talking to people and listening and being influenced. In terms of making the instrument for Steve, I mean, that is such a pleasure, because like he has a need that could possibly be met by us, and wow, how cool is that? But also the constraints, you know, he has really useful constraints. And also he has kind of a very cool ambition, which is he wants to play chords and he can't do that. And nothing is allowing him to do that. And so actually, perhaps it's interesting in terms of your question and your question, putting those together, perhaps that's what's so delightful maybe for me about working on the hackathon, was that there was somebody else's very useful constraint and dream, and we could put those together and actually potentially even answer them quite quickly. I think that talk, because I basically wrapped it up in a paper and did it at the OMI conference, which is the One-Handed Musical Instruments Conference. I'm pretty sure those talks are online, so you could watch me talking more about the Steve process. But yeah, so I guess that's what's a nice thing. And I would be entirely open to doing much more of that, because I love marrying compositional aims with physical possibilities. I mean, I ran a festival that was all about the physical performance of music, Beam, and I even ran the first ever conference in the UK of the New Interfaces for Musical Expression conference with Atao Tanaka. You know, I was so kind of involved in the electronic expressivity. So yeah, so it's nice because you can do it quickly, I suppose, is the obvious answer to Steve's instrument. And it'd be lovely to keep developing it. Yeah. That might be enough time, do you think?
Any last questions from the room? If not, we'll say thank you very much.
I'd like to say thank you as well. Thank you.
All right, before you all go, if you want to stick around in Hot Desk today or find out more about what we do, then please come find one of the studio team. Studio team, give us a wave. We're here. If you're watching online, drop us a line on studio@watershed.co.uk with any questions. Thank you all for being here today, and we'll see you all again next time.
Will this be available online after?
Yep.